So without a doubt, the GLA adventure is very special to us, very close to our heart, and so the GLA itself becomes a very special model too. So when the new generation arrived, we wanted to get our hands on it right away. Thanks to the pandemic, we had to wait, take our time, but I'm excited because we finally have the cars here with us. It's nice also to see that the family has come in with a number of variants. You've got two variants on the diesel, the 220D and the 220D AMG line. That's the AMG line, of course. This one is the GLA 200, that's the petrol. But you know what? That's not all. The GLA family has another special member in India from Word Go. And you know what? We've got it exclusively for you here on Car and Bike.
The Mercedes-AMG GLA 35 4MATIC is one of the racier avatars of the GLA-Class SUV. The car comes with that hallowed AMG badge, and it, along with the more potent GLA 45 and 45S models, offers faster, edgier performance, and hey, you know it, styling too. As I said, we have the whole family, but we want to first show you the apex predator in the GLA clan here in India. A special car indeed, so we brought it to a special place. To begin with, the new generation of the GLA has more of an SUV proportion when compared to the last car. It's a good looker, and the AMG version more so.
Now usually on a sports SUV, it's the styling changes and even some of the mechanical elements that make the car look a little more hunkered down, more sporty. It's interesting how the design on the GLA 35, because of that AMG badge, actually lend it more of an SUV nature. I mean, the vertical slats, AMG front grille, makes the car look a little upright, makes the front look more imposing. And you've also got the bigger wheels. The AMG pattern certainly helps that cause once again. And the 4MATIC badging, I mean, that's again, true blue SUV. So it's interesting, like I said, how the GLA 35, the AMG version, tends to look more butch than the regular one.
There are 6 colors, and while that includes the Patagonia red you see here, being a Designo color, this costs extra. 6,70,000 extra to be exact. The car gets a lot of things standard for India, and that list spans everything from the 19-inch wheels to the panoramic sunroof.
So you know how they say hot hatch? Well, this one's like a hot compact SUV. I know it doesn't have the same ring to it. The reason I say that is because, look, with the GLA, there was criticism of the first generation being too much like a hatch and not SUV enough. The good news on this generation is it drives like an SUV. You get into one and straight away you have that SUV feel. So does that also translate into a sporty SUV feel on the 35? Now there's a little layer to that answer. The simple answer is no, but I think that's a good thing. A lot of people would say, hey, it should continue to feel like an SUV when you're driving it because it is a GLA. But I submit that a lot of people buying this car are buying it for its performance. If they wanted just a compact Mercedes SUV, they could just buy the regular GLA 200 or 220D. Why would they buy this one? Well, only because they would drive themselves. They wouldn't be sitting at the back and they want this exhilaration. So the car shouldn't drive like an SUV, it should drive more like a sports car. Now, it's of course not like a super sports, but it gives you that stiffness at the expense of hard ride quality, yes, no doubt. On our roads, maybe not the best thing, but at least you get that true sports experience. For me, that's a huge tick, a red tick.
The steering is not as sharp or stiff as I had expected though, but does the job. If you are expecting a typical Mercedes-Benz feel in the car overall, think again. The GLA 35 is stiff and best suited for those who like being in the driver's seat.
An adaptive suspension with variable damping, that is standard for the India spec. It's a good thing too because frankly, if you look at our road conditions and marry it to the fact that this is at the end of the day a slightly stiffer car, well obviously the two things work very well together.
So you can have individualized driver mode settings. Then there's Comfort, Sport or Sport Plus. In Comfort mode in particular, the ride will feel a bit more pliant. Yet on a car like this, you want the growl and the instant response, meaning Sport or Sport Plus are its best modes. The GLA 35 uses the Mercedes-Benz M260 4-cylinder engine that also goes into the range-topping Petrol GLA 250 overseas. The engine has been given an AMG tune, but it is not made by AMG. That's only on the GLA 45. There's a minimum hint of lag, and so along with quick throttle response, you get a gearbox that will comply even if you don't use the paddles.
So the great news is that the cabin feels very much like an AMG. It's got all the typical trimmings and trappings of an AMG model in terms of color, palette, material. You got the red stitching everywhere. You've even got the red seat belts, which I love. And so that's the part which will be great because, you know, the 35 is really for people who are driving themselves, owners who are driving themselves. Fits the brief.
The cabin gives you the latest single-screen look infotainment touchscreen plus digital cluster. The cluster has customized views of the instruments too. The two screens work through touchpads on the steering, as in all Mercedes models. The same is true for the car's phone connectivity, wireless charging and a Burmester sound system. The car also has an inbuilt SIM with the Mercedes Me Connect app, allowing you to use telematic functions like remote unlock or geofencing. Being an AMG model, you also get the flat-bottomed steering wheel and sport seats. On the safety front, everything and more is standard: collision warning, tire pressure monitoring, ISOFIX, 7 airbags including a knee airbag, active brake and brake assist, active bonnet, stability control, anti-lock brakes with brake force distribution, and attention assist.
Now, it's the three letters at the back of this car. That's the one thing that's going to get a lot of attention besides the car itself. AMG. No surprise to see an AMG parked with an exotic backdrop like that, right? You do see these kind of customers going to these sort of places, but what's going to be interesting is the strategy from Mercedes-Benz India. You've got the compacts driving out, which are locally built AMG models for the first time. So more accessible, a whole lot more perhaps on our roads. And it'll be good to see what the competition does about that. And of course, remember, speaking of being accessible, places like this, getting there in an SUV, easier, isn't it?
Yes, this is now the third AMG model to be assembled here. This allows the company to offer a GLA with that AMG badge at under 60 lakh rupees. The pricing for the GLA 35 makes it quite attractive given the car's dual personality. The GLA 35 is a blend of practicality and performance. It is relatively affordable than a full-blown AMG model would be, and so I could not be happier that it forms an integral part of the GLA-Class portfolio here in India, and not just a niche small batch of import units as we saw in the last generation. That portfolio now, as you will recall, stretches to 4 variants then. There's the GLA 200 Petrol, the GLA 220D and 220D 4MATIC with the AMG trim. Those are the diesels. And then of course, this car, the GLA 35.
So as expected, the AMG Avatar, lots of fun. But you know what? Let's not take away from the fact that there's plenty to offer with the regular GLA as well. Those details are coming up after a short break on our GLA special.
The Mercedes-Benz GLA-Class is in its second generation and succeeds a very popular and high-selling car worldwide. Its India debut took longer than expected due to the pandemic, but the family is finally here and in full force. So India gets this lineup. There is the range-topping Mercedes-AMG GLA 35 that you saw first and exclusive on carandbike. And the regular GLA gets 3 variants. There are 2 diesels with the same engine but with different specs and trim. And this, the GLA 200, which is a petrol. The GLA 200 gets the progressive line trim, and so it's a sexy front grille and the 18-inch wheels. Inside too, there is a different color scheme with a light palette, 4 wood tones, and yet you do get the complete technology suite you'd expect from a Mercedes.
Now, a lot of brands will swear by diesel when it comes to SUVs in particular. That's understandable. But when it comes to compact SUVs, well, then petrol starts to play a very important role. And especially for an entry premium car like this one. Well, don't forget, a lot of buyers here prefer to drive themselves. They may not be using a chauffeur or a driver. And so then petrol takes on an increased significance.
And a lot of brands in this consideration set, even the mass ones, have gone petrol only in India. Don't forget. Like on the A-Class sedan, the GLA 200 gets the smallest petrol engine in the global lineup. A smart and brave decision from Mercedes-Benz India, quite frankly. That means a 1.3-litre 4-cylinder engine that gives you a healthy 161 bhp and a meaty 250 Nm of peak torque. The transmission is a 7-speed dual clutch, and that mileage figure sure is rather attractive for a car this size. The engine is certainly not exhilarating, but it is smooth and efficient. It's also very refined, so barring the times you want aggressively dynamic response, it will also do the job well. It will rev a lot, and you'll have to drop gears quickly for an instant response. But this is not a fast car, though its top speed is 210 km per hour. If you want something punchy, well, there's the AMG model, the GLA 35. The car handles well though, and the steering feel and ride quality give you plenty to celebrate about. There is also no all-wheel drive on this variant, and so it's obvious the idea was to have an attractive pricing for the entry GLA variant.
So the GLA is not just a family favorite for us here at Car and Bike, very popular car for Mercedes-Benz India. The only thing that kind of went against the last generation, a lot of people said it didn't have that SUV proportion. It didn't have that stance. That's changed dramatically with this second generation car for sure. And then you know what? Last time we had to wait for the facelift. We had to wait a long time to get the 4MATIC, which really sort of proves its SUV-ness. This time, we get the 4MATIC at the start, Shams.
Yes, Siddharth, and with the AMG line, to me looks more appealing for sure. Gets more features as well, and yes, a diesel engine still appeals to a lot more people, especially in the luxury segment.
The diesel in the pack gets the all too familiar drivetrain. The 2-litre OM 654 engine makes 188 brake horsepower, and you get a juicy 400 Newton meters of torque that kicks in nice and low at 1600 RPM and has a generous band.
So there are two variants on the diesel, the 220D progressive line and the 220D 4MATIC AMG line. This AMG line certainly looks racier, and yes, the 4MATIC gives it more of an SUV edge. And yes, this one is also longer than the progressive line by 26 millimeters.
The AMG line gives you edgier styling with a diamond grille, sportier bumpers, spoilers and diffuser. Like the 200, you get the smart roof rails and panoramic sliding sunroof.
So let me quickly take you through the differences between this AMG line and the progressive trim on the GLA. What you get here is this Artico Dynamica combination all around you. Definitely looks sportier than the other variants. There you get an open pore walnut trim. Here you get an AMG line with this faux aluminium here on the doors, on the dash. And finally, a flat bottom steering wheel, red stitching, something that always works really well with the enthusiasts.
Yes, and that is akin to the interior of the actual AMG model, the GLA 35 of course.
The petrol we have on the GLA is supposed to be a frugal entry-level model. But when you want more performance, you have to look towards this diesel. The torque delivery here is quite smooth, and the response from the drivetrain is also quite punchy. In fact, when you compare all the variants, this is the quickest of the lot. If you remove the AMG, of course, does speeds of 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 7.3 seconds. And of course, you have the paddle shifts to play with.
Yes, the diesel 4MATIC is agile, quick and very much in keeping with the butch SUV character of grunt and go. The ample torque and decent power is great, even on the two-wheel drive variant. The car also handles well, and the extra heft gives the steering a sharper feel and better feedback than on the petrol. The GLA 4MATIC comes with an off-road mode. The 4MATIC splits torque between the front and back 50-50 in off-road mode. But still, the car will only do fine on rough and broken roads, as also some mild off-road driving. This is not a hardcore off-roader.
The hallmarks of the new GLA has to be its fantastic ride quality. You expect that from any Merc, more so from a new generation, and the GLA delivers on that. In fact, when you compare this to some of the other rivals of the GLA that are sold in the market right now, like the X1 or the Volvo XC40, this one is a step higher and gives you really plush ride quality.
The GLA is the right size and segment for the Indian entry premium market. Of course, prices in general across the board have increased steadily over the past few years. But given that, the entire GLA family is priced reasonably attractively. The prices at launch were a tad lower, by the way, but this is where things stand as of now. It is a very good spread on offer too, variant-wise, and having the locally made entry AMG variant is the joker in the pack, as it offers a car that is fun, dynamic and reasonably aggressive while still offering over 13 kilometers per litre and staying within reach on price. So the GLA-Class is surely a welcome addition to India's entry premium segment.
So that's a wrap on our GLA special. Please react to all 3 cars that you've seen today, react to everything else that we bring you, and tell us what more you'd like to see. As always, all of that feedback is very welcome here at Car and Bike. Everything that you've seen here resides on carandbike.com. Catch me on Twitter, and in the meanwhile, promise me you'll wear your seatbelts. Bye-bye.